A wave of hair caught his vision, and he swam toward it. All of a sudden, a plant wrapped around his ankle in a tight grip, preventing him from moving. He bent down and yanked at the vine, but its grasp was firmer than his own strength. He glanced upward as bubbles escaped his mouth, trying to swim away, kicking his legs wildly, but the struggle became too overwhelming, causing him to inhale through his nostrils. A blurry figure looming before him was the last thing that crossed his vision. On a December afternoon, the air was sharp with winter's edge as Elijah, 27, and his younger brother, Levi, 22, moved quietly through the forest, their eyes fixed on a four-legged creature drinking from a nearby stream. Elijah, with a finger to his lips, turned to his brother, and with a word, Levi grabbed an arrow from the quiver strapped to his back, attached it to his bow, and aimed it toward the animal. His vision aligned with his target, and in his mind, he counted 1, 2, 3. The string snapped, sending the arrow through the air and into the creature's body. "Good job, bro," Elijah said. The boys walked over to the deer, now lying on its side, its breath shallow, blood seeping from its wound. This was one of the hardest parts of the job for Levi. He hated watching others suffer. Meanwhile, Elijah had to be the one to carry it out in the end. He took the large hatchet from the strap on his back and, with a single swing, ended the animal's pain. Levi was taller than his older brother, but Elijah was broader. Together, they had traveled miles daily since the age of 16. After a few years, they had mentally mapped most of their surroundings. But today was unlike the others. They entered new territory, a place outside of their map, beyond boundaries they had never dared to cross before. The animals migrated south, and that was the direction where other hunters lurked, where one could reach the city if they wandered far enough. Elijah moved the deer from his shoulders, laying it on the scarred wooden table where countless skins had been stripped before. Levi slipped inside, setting his bow and quiver by the door before sinking into a chair. Their cabin was a patchwork of necessity, a cramped kitchenette, battered couches, a flickered square TV, and cots squeezed between shelves. The only privacy in the cabin was a small corner blocked by a hanging shower curtain. Behind it were a showerhead, toilet, and sink. When storage was needed, the boys hammered together a shed out back. At sunset, as the three sat around the square table, Levi asked Grandma, "Where do you get that sauce?" "This?" She held up a bottle of red liquid that had "Red Sauce" written in bold letters. "From the store! Try some!" She placed it in front of him. Without a word, he poured a decent amount onto his plate, and then Elijah had some as well. Their eyes seemed to brighten once the taste hit their tongues. "Is this something you buy from the city?" Elijah asked next. She nodded. "It is." "I noticed you get a lot of things from the city, like batteries, matches, and other stuff. Don't city folks have to work to buy things?" Joan sat back and folded her arms in her lap. "Your parents have been leaving me money." The brothers froze, looking at each other, and then back at her. "You speak to Mom and Dad?" Elijah's voice was sharp with curiosity. "No, I do not." Joan looked down. "The checks have been coming in since the day your parents left. I do not have any communication with them." "That means they're still out there somewhere," Levi acknowledged. Eliza's eyes darted to him. "Not like we need it." His voice was filled with buried hate that Levi knew all too well. "Why, instead of checking on their kids, would they rather send money?" Levi's lip curled slightly. "They're trying to help." "Is that so?" Elijah snapped. "I guess that's why they abandoned us when we were young and left us to go live in the city. They couldn't handle being responsible parents, so they just gave up. You were 4 and I was 9. I have better memories of them than you. Mother sang songs to put you to bed, and Father read us stories, and for some reason, he just left us hanging." Levi's eyes remained fixed on the table as Elijah stood and walked out the door. His brother's words cut deep inside him. From time to time, he glanced at the photo album of himself and his parents, questioning their actions, wondering what caused them to make such a decision. He longed for them and hoped his parents still cared for them, still thought of them. Yet their absence had been replaced by money. Joan reached over, placing her hand on top of his, and squeezed gently. "They loved both of you," she confirmed. "Why did they leave again?" he asked softly. Joan's face fell. "I don't know, honey, I don't know." The next day, the brothers' pockets were stuffed with cotton and silk. They had hand-picked from the fields to fill their pillows and blankets for the cold nights. It also gave their grandmother something to do around the house. She stitched and sewed the clothing they wore, as well as all the blankets. Levi and Elijah's usual attire consisted of a pair of leather boots, a hunter frock, cotton pants, along with their own personal gear. It was colder that day, their breath puffing out into frosty clouds as they trudged toward home to drop off their haul. 2 raccoons darted in front of them, their striped tails vanishing into the underbrush. "Oh boy, it looks like we're having raccoon soup tonight," Elijah called, taking up after them. "Elijah, wait!" Levi shouted, his bow and quiver thumping against his back as he tried to keep up with his brother. The sound of rustling grass in the distance suddenly stilled. Elijah had gone too far ahead, and everything grew quiet. Too quiet. He froze. "Elijah? Elijah!" Levi spun around, listening for even the faintest sound. Everything appeared the same as the maze of trees and tall grass. His heart started to thud. Being lost in unfamiliar territory scared him. They lived in a vast forest that stretched hundreds of miles, and without his brother to help, he feared the worst. "Damn it," he whispered, and pulled out his gold compass from his pocket. He knew they had traveled from the north and headed in that direction. The brothers had only separated once in an excursion, but that was years ago when Levi became distracted by a meadow in the forest. Meanwhile, Elijah was capturing a squirrel. Thankfully, they were not that far apart, and one call brought them together again. This time, however, was different. Levi had not traveled far when a lilting voice drifted through the trees. "Hello?" He spun around. The voice continued, and curiously, he followed the sound while keeping a careful eye on the compass. He was going somewhere east. Large plants were pushed aside to make space for him to venture through, and soon after, the sound of splashing water reached him. At long last, he emerged into a vast clearing where a waterfall fell into the round springs below. Bright wildflowers and colors of the rainbow surrounded the water. He had never seen anything like it before. He dropped his tools and wandered to the edge of the water, then knelt down to take a drink. He'd almost forgotten about the voice. Unaware, it had stopped. When it resumed again, haunting and sweet, snapping his attention in its direction. There, a woman waist-deep in the pond, her bare back to him. Her fingers moved through a cascade of long green hair. Women were not seen so far into the wilderness, and he and his brother had never seen another. He stood, and with a trembling voice, he spoke. "Pardon me, fair maiden." She paused, looking around before turning toward him. Levi's cheeks flushed. Her blue eyes gazed at him. She had fin-like appendages coming through the tresses on both sides of her head, as if they were attached ears, and her hair covered her exposed chest. He swallowed and spoke again. "It's not safe for you to be out here. There are hunters and woodsmen like myself who walk these grounds." The woman stared at him in silence. "I can offer you my protection and take you home." She sank deeper into the water until only her eyes were visible. "She's afraid of me," Levi thought. "I promise I mean no harm," he added. "My brother and I live with our grandmother, not very far from here. We've got food and shelter." When she said nothing, he wondered, can she even talk? Before he could say more, she dived beneath the water. "Hey!" Panic rushed through him, and a sense of urgency overcame him. Levi ran into the cool water, swam to where he had last seen her, and then dove under. A wave of hair caught his vision, and he swam toward it. All of a sudden, a plant wrapped around his ankle in a tight grip, preventing him from moving. He bent down and yanked at the vine, but its grasp was firmer than his own strength. He glanced upward as bubbles escaped his mouth, trying to swim away, kicking his legs wildly, but the struggle became too overwhelming, causing him to inhale through his nostrils. A blurry figure looming before him was the last thing that crossed his vision. Those who share a bond with the natural world may encounter an unfathomable presence whose alluring yet danger to those who breathe the earth's air and drink its water. His eyes opened to the late evening sky above him. He sat up, eyeing his body wrapped in giant waxy leaves that crinkled as he moved. What in the world? Clawed at the leaves, ripping them apart, freeing himself. When he finally stood, he faced a hole inside a tree. It was big enough for him to walk inside, but he hesitated, not because of the size, but because of the darkness. "Hello?" he called out, to no one in particular. The same sound of water splattering echoed in the background. He followed it to a gap between two trees, squeezing himself through. He was back at the springs once again. His gear was right where he had left it, his eyes gliding over the clearing. Why was I tied up? Who tied me up? Where was the girl? A cold sweat prickled down his neck. The entire situation made him feel uneasy. He just wanted to get home, so he grabbed his bow and arrows, pulled out his compass, and headed toward the cabin. It was dark by the time he arrived. White, clean smoke swaying in the air from the chimney pots on the roof. When he walked through the doorway, a firm hand gripped his left shoulder. "And where the hell were you?" Elijah's mouth thinned. "You think disappearing like that is okay, Grandma and I searched hours for you." Levi bit his lip, unsure where to begin. "Well, you ran too fast chasing after the animals, and I lost you. I was heading back home, but then I heard a voice, and I followed it to a spring, and there was this girl. She swam underwater, and I went after her, and then..." He rubbed his forehead. "I think I drowned, but I woke up covered in leaves." Elijah's face wrinkled in confusion. He opened his mouth just as Joan entered the house with a bucket full of water. "Oh, Levi!" She dropped the metal bucket, hurried over, and hugged him. "My gosh! I thought, what happened?" At the dining table, they sat with a bowl of soup, peas and carrots, as Levi explained about the girl he had seen. "Oh dear, I hope she's okay." Joan's brow creased as she stirred her soup. "She shouldn't be out there by herself." "You think she lives in a cabin like us?" Elijah asked, mouth half full. "I wonder," Levi replied. Later that night, Levi lay on his cot. He thought of the woman at the springs, her round blue eyes staring at him in the moment before she swam. Who is she? Was she the one who saved me in the water? Why didn't she speak to me? Joan's older sister Mandy came to visit, and for the next few days they were all stuck inside as rain poured hard against the cabin's roof. The boys adored their great aunt, who shared wonderful stories and gifts, often bringing them clothing and gadgets, but she was a bit of a space hog. Her 6 large suitcases filled most of the living area. She traveled with 3 cats that had their own litter box and scratching post, and her loud snores roared through the night. On Mandy's last day, she and Joan sipped tea as she spoke about the boys' career. "I tell you, sister, they could be doing something useful in the city with their skills." "I never want to leave this place," whispered Elijah to his brother in the kitchen. "Yeah, I thought about that," Joan replied. "I don't want them to be stuck here after I'm gone." Elijah believed he could retrieve whatever he wanted by taking it from the forest around them, and that worked for paper money, only to use it to buy goods, he said. Sounded ridiculous. Levi, on the other hand, wanted to know more about life beyond the trees. Days later, the skies were back to their blue, the sun shone, and the air remained cool. The brothers were chopping wood with axes when Elijah stopped, nudging Levi's arm. "Take me to that place you spoke about." "Why?" "If there's a spring out there, then there has to be fish." Levi nodded, and together they set up their fishing poles at the same spot where Levi had found it. The water splashed from the hill where it fell, and the flowers on the ground rested as colorful as ever. But this time, 2 others stood at the edge of its wake. Levi and Elijah hid behind tall bushes. "No one's here," the man with the logs grumbled. "She swims in this water," the other replied. "Do you know how cold it is right now?" "Yeah, but this is morning. A girl was here, and then..." He paused. "Then she went in the water." "Dude, we don't have time for this. Mama is probably freezing to death. You know she's still sick from last time." The log carrier started walking off. "Fine, but I'll be back tomorrow," his partner called after him. When the strangers were out of sight, the brothers emerged from hiding and filled their flasks. "I can't believe we've never found anything like this before," Elijah commented, eyeing their surroundings. He stood knee-deep in the water and, with the fishing rod, slung it back before launching it forward. "A new place was just waiting to be discovered," Levi replied with a smile. He stood near his brother, and together they fished in silence, both catching 5 fish and placing them into the basket they brought. "At least now we have a new fishing spot. Catching them in a river is extra work. Then again, we have to travel farther to get here," Elijah acknowledged. He grabbed the bucket. "You ready to go?" Levi turned to him, then back at the water. "Actually, I think I might stay here for a little while." "Really? Splitting up again?" Levi sat on the ground where the water nearly reached his legs. "I'll be here. Come back when the meal is ready." "All right, see you later." He removed his gear, shirt, and footwear before entering the water. His teeth chattered the moment half of his body was covered. He immersed himself, letting the water swallow him whole. He swam lap after lap until exhaustion took over. He and his brother had swam a lot as children, but it was in a 10-foot inflatable pool, and their feet always touched the bottom. Joan had given them swimming lessons, and now, inside the springs, everything seemed to have come naturally. His soaked pants clung to his legs, creating a slight drag that made him wish he had brought a towel. Just as he removed his compass, a rustling caught his attention. "Hello?" He looked back and forth at the trees and bushes in front of him. "Is someone there?" He thought of her. "Are you here, girl?" Silence answered, and without further indication of another presence, Levi picked up his items and proceeded on his journey home. He barely made it a few steps into the forest before a sudden force slammed him against a tree. A bone knife pressed firmly to his throat. Her hair was twisted up in a wild bun. "You brought men to destroy my trees. Tell me why I shouldn't slit your throat." His eyes grew wide. "What? I did no such thing." "Lie!" She leaned closer to his face. "You were talking to one of the men." His brows knit together. Was she watching the entire time? "That was my brother. He's harmless. We don't know the other males," he said honestly, staring into her blue eyes. Her gaze searched his face for any sign of a lie, and when she seemed satisfied, she stepped back and lowered the weapon. Levi took in her unique appearance. Her hair was pinned with sticks, and she wore a skirt and bra made from braided grass. A fin poked from the sides of her face where her ears would have been. They looked natural. She had 2 wary lines etched on each side of her neck, and a golden pattern shimmered down her pale left arm, across her lower stomach, and wrapped around her right leg. "If you did not bring those men, why have you come?" she asked. "For the fish." He glanced toward the aqua water. "You're eating my fish? Your fish?" She turned back to him. "Everything surviving from my water source is mine," she replied. Levi recalled the deed Joan kept in a box filled with papers. She had told him that it was the only document proving their claim over the property, and with it, no one else could live on it. "Your deed covers this spring? How far does your land reach?" She blinked. "My land reaches as far as the water travels." "What is this deed you speak of?" Levi's forehead creased once again. "A deed is a piece of paper that proves your land claim." "Paper?" He stared. Why was she unaware of a deed? He wondered. Had her family not shown her? Before he had a chance to reply, footsteps rustled in the grass. Elijah appeared seconds later, holding a small hatchet. He paused, his gaze falling on the female in surprise. She held up her knife to her chest. "That is Elijah, my brother from earlier. He's innocent, remember?" Levi reminded her. She looked at him, then back at the newcomer. "Elijah," she greeted. "Hi." Elijah's eyes darted back and forth from Levi to her. "I just came back to tell you that Grandma is starting lunch." Levi nodded. "Maybe your friend can come for a meal." She looked back and forth at them. "I cannot leave the grounds." "Why?" Levi asked without thinking. "My life is here." The brothers glanced at one another. Elijah shrugged. "Well, it was nice meeting you. I never got your name," Levi said. "My name is Lynn," she replied. "Have a nice rest of the daylight." "I will take my leave. Please tell the others not to cut my trees anymore." She walked away without a second thought, and the boys stood there watching her disappear somewhere behind the waterfall. "So she is real," Elijah acknowledged. "She's really pretty." "Yeah," Levi agreed, but he felt something was very off about the girl. Where was her family? Why did she not know about the deed? Why couldn't she leave the grounds? But those were questions for another day. In the early morning, Levi awoke from his slumber and entered the kitchen for a glass of water. His brother and grandmother were still fast asleep, so he wandered over to the desk, removed a piece of paper and a pencil, and wrote a note informing them that he would be at the springs. He knew exactly where to go. So many questions swirled in his head about Lynn that he could not help but want to learn more about her. Water droplets gradually fell from the clouds, but that did not stop him from reaching his destination. This time around, no one stood near the water. Levi could not help but think of the men from the previous day. Had they already made a route? He undressed, and just as his feet touched the water, Lynn's head lifted from beneath. Her blue eyes stared at him from a distance. "Hi," he called, waving a hand. She blinked. "I wanted to talk to you again." Levi swallowed. There was something about the way she silently looked at him, as if immobilizing him. She was strange, but under her glare, he felt shy, and he was not a shy person. She swam to the waterfall and disappeared beyond the pour of the water. Could it be a cave? Is that where she lives? He had seen rock shelters in various cartoons he watched as a child, such as the Flintstones. He idled while she did whatever it was she did in her shelter. The idea of her having some sense of privacy pleased him. He felt better knowing she had a safe haven to rest during the night. Lynn's hair was wet against her shoulders when she returned into view. She swam toward Levi and walked out of the springs. "You have returned, human." He smiled slightly. "I have questions." "What questions?" she replied, circling him as if searching for something. He followed her gaze. "Why can't you leave this place?" "My life is here." "Your home is here and you never leave it?" "Yes," she replied, drawing out the word. "But why can't you leave?" "Because my life is here," she repeated. "Have you ever left before?" She shook her head. "No." "Why?" "Because I belong here." She stopped. Levi's eyebrows creased. "Lynn, you shouldn't have to stay in one place. You can go anywhere you want." "Human, I cannot go anywhere," she said. He blinked. "Is it your family? Do your parents forbid you from leaving?" "I never met my parents, and I don't know my sisters," she replied. "Nymphs live alone." "What's a nymph?" "We're embodiments of nature," she replied casually. "What?" he questioned, but she did not reply. "Lynn, you're very confusing, you know that. It is rare for humans and nymphs to socialize." "Why?" She walked away from him, but Levi was not satisfied with her answers. He moved in front of her, blocking her path. "Who are you really? My brother and I have spent our entire lives in this forest, and we've never come across anyone like you." "I am Lynn." She closed her eyes for a couple of seconds. "I know your name, but I don't know your purpose here. Why is a female living in the environment where men could cause her harm?" He wondered, then recalled the time she had held a knife to him. "Nymphs do not fear humans. Humans should fear nymphs," she responded. "You look human to me." "I am a nymph, a water nymph. We outlive humans," she whispered. Levi nodded slowly. He worried about her. Was she confused? The thought of such loneliness unsettled him. Without his grandmother or Elijah, he'd be lost. "How long have you lived like this, Lynn? Alone?" he asked. "From birth to the end of my time." Levi had always been taught men were more assertive and dominant than women. The Woodslands were no place for someone like her, who had no one to help when things got rough. Then he thought about his grandmother, who had lived in that cabin for years before he and his brother were born. She used to hunt and fish herself when they were younger. He looked at Lynn from head to toe. She was not like Joan, though. She did not belong. As the days drifted by, the brothers tackled a new project, building a pavement leading to the dirt road half a mile away, connecting to the shed and the main house. During the first couple of days, most of their time was spent working, and afterward they hunted for food, leaving Levi with only a short time with Lynn. However, the time he spent with her changed his perspective on life forever. On his way to her, he managed to scrape his arm against a tree branch. He had held close until he made it to the springs, dipping his arm into the water. The blood floated along the surface, and Lynn's footsteps from behind drew his attention. He turned slightly. "Hey," he greeted. "Hi," she replied. "You are hurt." She looked at his arm, squatting beside him. "Yeah, I don't think I was paying much attention." She stepped closer, taking his arm in her hands. Her eyes closed, and she began to hum. A slender ribbon of water rose from the pool nearby, swirling in the air like a wave and subsequently coiling around his wound. Levi watched, wide-eyed, as the water tightened and tingled against his skin. In a blink it vanished, and so had his cut. "What just happened?" Levi asked, looking at her. "My water healed you," she said, smiling. "That shouldn't be possible." He eyed his arm and placed a finger where the scrape had been. "Nymphs have many gifts. We control the part of nature we are bound to." "I am bound to the water," she said. "Meaning?" "It means I am one with the water. It travels through the soil, allowing me to move. Without it, I will die." She bent down and placed her hand in the water, and Levi observed the way the water traveled up her arm, covering it entirely, spreading up her body, blanketing her torso. The tattoos on her neck, arm, and leg glowed. "I am part of the fish, trees, and plants that use my natural liquid for survival." He could not deny what he saw, and everything she said sounded more like reality. He had not known of nymphs, but now, looking at the way she could manipulate the water, he knew she was not like ordinary people. "How many of you are there?" he wondered. Surely she could not be the only one in the world. Nature was everywhere. She looked down. "I don't really know. Maybe tons?" she said, and the water dropped from her body before fading away. Her body art had stopped glowing and now looked nothing more than an interesting tattoo. The sight fascinated him. "Where did you come from?" "Oceanus and his wife, Tethys," she answered with a smile. Levi recalled fairy tales he had heard as a child about the Titan Oceanus and his goddess Tethys. They were like siblings born into the same lineage who married and had children. "You're the daughter of a god and goddess?" "All nymphs are daughters of gods and goddesses," she said matter-of-factly. Once the pavement was completed and Joan was planting flowers along the walkway, a sleek black car rolled up to the house. A man stepped out dressed in dark pants, a vest, and a red cape, topped with a tall hat and a cane he seemed to use more as an accessory than a necessity. Levi and his brother emerged from behind the house. "Miss Spencer," the man called, wandering over to Joan. "Yeah, that's me," she replied, standing up on the ground. "How can I help you?" "My name is Pius Sermon, and I am with the government. I came to discuss this property with you. You see, your home sits on 30 acres of woodland, and we would like to create a city here," he said, pulling out an envelope from somewhere inside his cape. "We are offering 25,000 if you sell your land to us." The brothers looked at each other, mouths parted. "Now, if you sign these papers, the money will be deposited within 3 business days." He held the documents in front of her. She took the parcel and ripped it open, taking out a stack of papers. Upon reading the first page, she shook her head. "Absolutely not. This indicates my property value is estimated at $500,000, not the amount you're trying to offer me." Upon reading the first page, she shook her head. "Absolutely not. This indicates my property value is estimated at $500,000, not the amount you're trying to offer me," Joan said, her voice steady but edged with defiance. "Besides, the boys and I have been living here for some time now. Surely you could build elsewhere." Mr. Sermon smiled. "Well, ma'am, this is a prime location, and your home is right in the center of our plans." His tone was polite but persuasive. "It would be wise to take this offer, because if you don't, we might just have to take you to court to battle for it." He twisted his lips, looking up as if deep in thought. "I estimate that would be a lot of money and time. Do you have that time to spare?" "You cannot take our home," Elijah spoke out, his voice almost a growl, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Sermon's gaze flittered to him. "I assure you, sir, we can and we will." He grabbed a pen from his pocket and held it toward Joan. "Just sign, it will make things easier for you." He forced another smile. Elijah marched in front of him. "Get the hell away from our property," his voice boomed, "or I'll make you." Joan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Elijah, calm down, I got this." He turned to her, brows knitted and lips thinned. "Grandma, don't let him take our home," she waved. "Calm down, he's not taking anything." She turned to the man. "Listen, I have the deed and I know my legal rights." Sermon nodded, brushing off invisible dust from his coat. "Very well, I see this is not a good time," he said, looking at Elijah and back to Joan. "I will be in contact once more, just in case you change your mind." "We won't," Elijah muttered loudly. "You have my number. Call should things change." He eyed everyone before turning to leave. They watched him enter his car and drive back down the dirt road until they could see it no more. "Grandma, you can't actually do anything, right?" Levi asked calmly. "No," Joan shook her head, her brows tight, "but men like that would try anything to get their way." "Everyone should have their own land. Isn't the world big enough?" Lynn looked ahead as she articulated her thoughts. Nymphs live freely, quietly, and solitarily. Everyone deserves their own sanctuary. On the giant rock that rested at the bottom of the shallowest part of the water, Levi lay on his back against it, looking into the blue sky. Yeah, the world could use more of that, he said. His movies and books and city life always looked busy and sometimes chaotic, with children going to school, parents heading to work, and the din of street traffic. He then thought about his parents. He still wondered why they had never stayed in contact or visited from time to time. Could they really not care? Elijah's words repeated in his mind. I guess that's why they abandoned us when we were young and left us to go and live in the city. Levi could not help but wonder. Had their parents given up on them? Had they chosen to live an easier life? In the spur of the moment, a roar of machines shattered the forest hush. Levi's heart leapt. He and Lynn stood quickly as a massive tree crashed down near them. Instinct took over as Levi pulled Lynn's arm and jumped into the water. Another tree had fallen into the reservoir. He swam above it and to the other side. Outside, he climbed his way out, looking behind him at the clear blue water, now darkened by leaves, bark, and other debris that had contaminated it. "Lynn? Lynn!" he called, eyes darting. More trees began to fall all around him, accompanied by the loud mechanical sounds of machines. One in particular appeared close by, with a large scoop and 2 men sitting inside. "Levi!" Elijah ran from somewhere unknown, grabbing his forearm. "I came to warn you, but they're already here." "What's going on?" "They're destroying the forest," Elijah replied. "Come, we need to get home now." The two raced toward the cabin, dodging limbs and smaller trees as they went. The loud racket surrounded them as the thumping of wood impacted the ground. Joan stood in front of the cabin, hands folded across her chest, wearing a robe. "Oh, goodness gracious, are you two all right?" she said, seeing them arrive. "Grandma, what's happening?" asked Levi. "Isn't it obvious? Those darned city folk are starting their construction. Y'all come inside." Noise went on for hours, but stopped somewhere in the middle of the night. "At least it's over," said Elijah, wrapping in a blanket on the couch. "Yes. For now. They'll be back." Joan shook her head and glanced away. "I've been thinking about whether we should leave or not." Levi sat on the same couch as his brother, leaning against the headset in a robe. "No way," Elijah interjected. "Listen here, you two." She leaned towards the edge of the couch. "I've had this home for a very long time, and I love it here. But they will continue their construction, whether we like it or not. They probably already bought the rights to the land if they can cut down all the trees like this. It's not going to be safe for either of you to hunt. If something happened to one of you, I don't know what I would do." She looked down. "I can't lose someone else." The room went quiet, a cold, unfortunate sense of reality settling over them. "What if we found another place in the woodlands?" Elijah suggested. Joan shook her head. "Sweetheart, they're building a city. They are removing all of the forest. They just might not be anything left." Levi was less opposed to city life than his brother. He liked the idea of something new, something different. Like Lynn. He did not know if she was okay. He had not seen her leave the water. Did she survive? Joan told the boys that tomorrow they would leave to visit the bank. When asked why, she said, "You'll see when we get there." After nightfall, Levi worried more about Lynn to the point of nearly driving himself insane. What if she was in trouble? What if she's hurt? What if she needs help? Those intrusions in his mind caused him to wrap himself in a jacket, grab a flashlight from the kitchen counter, and put on his boots. The night's eerie silence pressed in as Levi picked his way through the fallen trees, crawling and climbing where he had to. He frowned as he looked at the springs. The water was so black that it looked unrecognizable. 3 trees lay across against each other, halfway sticking out of the water. "Lynn! Lynn! Are you here?" Nothing happened. No response, no footsteps, no rustling of the bushes, only the rapid water crashing from the waterfall. "I really hope you made it out," he whispered. Back at home, he crept inside, removing his gear at the door when Joan looked at him from the chair in the kitchen. "Where did you go?" Levi froze, looking at her with a sad smile. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I had to check on her. We got separated and I didn't know if Lynn was okay." "Did you find her?" He shook his head. "No. I'm sorry about your friend. Let's hope she found help." Where could she have gone if she spent her entire life in that one spot? She had told him before that she could not leave the soil that contained her water. Could it have allowed her to travel far enough to hide from the machines and away from the fallen logs? following morning, the three of them ate breakfast before cramming into a taxi in the bank in the city. Levi glanced out the window at the many people crossing the street and walking on the sidewalk. He wondered where they were going. Perhaps to work? Shopping? Visiting a friend? Inside the bank, while he and his brother sat in the waiting area, he was fascinated by workers' clothing. The women wore two-button blazers, skirts, and heels, while the men wore multi-button blazers over shirts, pants, and shiny Oxfords. They were dressed in a way that made him feel out of place, but looking at the customers inside, like his grandma, he realized it was just a business standard. It was very different from him and Elijah, who wore the same kind of clothing every day. Joan sat in the chair between the two brothers, her eyes bright with wonder. She held a piece of paper and placed it in front of them to see. "Now, guys, I know I said about the deed in our home, but I have a backup plan. I almost forgot about it." Levi's eyebrows rose upon seeing the words deed written on bold letters and 2 acres of land with the city address. "This land is inside the city. You two can continue doing what you love, but will no longer be in the forests." Levi looked at Elijah, who looked back at him. "You planning on selling?" Elijah asked with a sigh. "Yeah," she nodded. "You two deserve a better life. We need to know how to survive in the world when I'm no longer here. I'm an old woman, but you two are strong young men, and I know you'll both do amazing things. This is my way of making sure you two are safe once I'm gone." Levi slowly nodded. "This new land has trees?" Joan smiled. "It has some. I'm afraid we'll need to purchase logs or gather them ourselves." "So it's gonna be like starting over," Elijah added. She nodded. "It will be. But this time we'll have extra resources." "Fine, we can build another house," Elijah agreed. The city of Pakawee had skyscrapers, neon lights blazing, restaurants and shops lining the corners, and people rode on bikes and scooters. The street traffic was dense, with many vehicles parked beside the sidewalks and bunched together on the road. Joan helped the boys obtain proper identification and search for jobs, which took a while, but luckily some neighbors praised the work the brothers had done building their home, eventually landing them jobs as laborers. Within a year, Elijah found love, moved in with his partner, and soon welcomed twins. Levi, though, still found his thoughts drifting to Lynn. Sometimes he'd stare out his window, remembering the forest. One quiet Sunday, he took a taxi back to their old land. The cabin was gone, replaced by slabs of cement, unfinished buildings, and a humming gas station. Machines lay out in plain sight. For miles, he saw what was once a place Elijah and he called home, now deforested and turned into a metropolis. A month later, Levi met someone too, and she moved in with him and his grandmother. During a late morning, and after having a cup of coffee, he sat down on the couch. "I have some news about your parents," Joan said from the recliner. She threw an open envelope to him, her eyes wet with tears. "Grandma, are you all right?" She sniffed, nodding. "Read the paper." Levi took the 3 folded papers from the mail. His eyes glided over the first. It was a letter from his mother. "Dear Elijah and Levi, my 2 wonderful boys. You're probably wondering why your father and I left you both with Joan after all these years. I want you both to know that we left because we tried to give you a better life. Your father got a job in a city 2 hours away. It would have been difficult to travel back and forth daily. So he stayed close to his job, and me, well, I did not want to leave him behind. Besides, he needed my help. It was just supposed to be something short and simple, with a reward of a large sum of cash, enough to provide a better life for all of us. But things did not go as planned. The people we worked for were involved in very shady activities. We tried to leave, but things got very bad. They had us trapped for a long time. If you're reading this, something happened to me or Dad, or both of us, I want you to know that we loved you both dearly. I thought about you every single day. We celebrated your birthdays with prayers each year, and we're sorry for any distress we may have caused you boys, including Joan, Mommy, and Daddy." He looked up at Joan with tears rolling down his face. She wore a tearful look. "They were gonna come back," Levi said, his voice cracking. Joan tilted her head to the side, nodding. "I know." He closed his eyes, letting excess water fall from them. "Does Elijah know?" "Not yet. He's coming later today." Levi had calmed his nerves when Elijah entered the house. One swift look at the two of them, and his older brother knew something was up. "What's going on?" he asked. "Read this." The replied Levi, holding the papers out to him. Grabbing the mail, Elijah sat on the couch, his eyes scanning the pages. Levi caught the way he paused at the end of the first text, his face turning hard. He moved to the second line and third, and then more pages, which were the death certificates of their parents. Seconds later, he threw the paper onto the end table, stood up, and began pacing back and forth in the room. "Brother?" Levi called. "I don't believe it," Elijah shook his head. "I don't believe it." Levi watched the sadness creeping over his brother's features. He knew how Elijah had always believed their parents abandoned them. He knew his anger, but on this day, there was no anger, there was no hate. "So they're really dead?" he asked. Joe nodded. "They're gone. We could go to where they're buried tomorrow." The deafening silence that filled the room felt eerie in their cabin home. It was 3 times bigger than the one they had built in the woodlands. It was 2 stories, with 4 bedrooms. Extra storage was not needed. The boys had built a spacious enough living area to house all their belongings. Levi's eyes stared at the floor, but when he lifted his head, he saw Elijah with tears rolling down his face. He knew something Joan did not. In the previous home, his older brother had kept a picture of him and their mother sitting outside in the grass under a pillow. Despite all of Elijah's words about their parents, Levi knew his brother cared for them as much as they had cared for him. Levi sat on the couch one evening with his partner, watching a movie, when a flicker of movement caught the corner of his eye in the window. He thought he glimpsed a flash of something green. He stood from the seat, wandered over to the window, lifted it up, and looked out. He could see the edge of what was the forest from there. Now nothing but new commercial buildings and roads. "Honey, what's the matter?" his girlfriend asked, wrapping an arm around his upper body. "I thought I saw someone. Oh, maybe it was a worker or something. There's been a lot of them around lately because of the new city they're building." "Or something," he whispered, but he was not convinced. Thank you for sticking to the end and listening to this epic fantasy story. Do not forget to click the link in the description to give some love to the author. Go and check out some of their other works. I know they would appreciate it. So if you have any stories you want to share, feel free to email me, DM me on Twitter, or any other social media. All my links are in the description. So until next time, collect those stories, because you never know when they'll be your saving grace.